I think Chevy might really have something here with the Bolt. I know that it was announced a few weeks ago and there was so much Tesla news I wanted to cover, so it kind of got behind on my schedule, but I genuinely think this is really impressive with the normal Bolt EV starting at around $32,000 and the Bolt EUV starting around $34,000. These are some of the most affordable EVs on the market that still have a range that can surpass 250 miles estimated by the EPA. So for one, they've updated the interiors to be a bit more sleek, still a little bit button heavy for me, but I think it's safe to say the updated Bolt has a much more modern look. It doesn't look as innocent and maybe as juvenile as the older Bolts did. I've never been much of a fan of the OG Bolt design, but this updated approach I'm definitely a big fan of. It looks a lot more approachable now, a lot more aggressive for such an affordable price, and to give you guys the basic specs, the cheaper Bolt EV that starts at around $32,000 does 259 miles on a charge, and that's with a 66 kilowatt hour battery pack. Apparently only 65 kilowatt hours is accessible. It's a rear-wheel drive, of course, which means that this is not necessarily the fastest EV out there. 0 to 60 time probably going to be looking at around 7 seconds, but if your main focus is having decent range and also affordability, I think this is a really compelling offer, especially if the federal tax credit for electric vehicles comes back for GM. That would potentially be pushing the price of this thing under $30,000 pretty comfortably, which of course is what we want to see with more EVs on the road, getting cheaper. And the Bolt EUV is a larger variant, about 6 inches longer, which makes it a bit more comfortable in the second row, gives you a bit more cargo space, but height and width is still the same. This allows the EUV to qualify for kind of the smaller SUV segment, which I think electric utility vehicle is a bit redundant of an acronym. I don't think we need to be flashing around EUV too much, so I'm hoping they can come up with a better name. Just call it the Bolt and the Bolt Plus or something, I don't know. But either way, the crossover segment is very, very popular, so having a very affordable but still fairly high range variant, and the range is only 9 miles worse than the regular EV, so you're still hitting 250 on day one, certainly makes them a lot more affordable than alternatives like the Tesla Model Y, which doesn't have a standard range variant sold anymore. And when it comes to autonomy, I'm sure autopilot and full self-driving are still going to be much better, but these Bolts now come with Super Cruise, which is basically GM's take on level 2 autonomous driving. It only works on pre-mapped routes, so you sadly cannot use it anywhere, and I think it's safe to say that the functionality and capability of Super Cruise is a lot more limited, but it is the first time they've ever brought it to a Chevy vehicle, so to see Super Cruise brought to a very affordable vehicle like this is awesome for autonomous driving features. So how's it so much cheaper, I bet, is what a lot of people are wondering. You've got this pretty stylized interior. I'm sure the materials aren't going to be, top tier, but still going to be supporting Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. Okay, the acceleration's not great, but the range is so good, so where necessarily are the compromises here? I would say probably the biggest one you might be making with a Bolt is the charging speed, which doesn't appear to be too fast, probably capping out around 55 kilowatts, and that typically means on road trips, your charging infrastructure, of course, is going to be a bit weaker because there's no supercharging access, which means planning your charge route is going to be a bit more of a responsibility on you, and the max charge rates only allow for around 100 miles to be added within 30 minutes, which isn't terrible, but compared to what other more expensive EVs can do these days, it's pretty slow. And in previous generations of the Bolt, the charging couldn't be as fast in lower temperatures. That has actually been improved with the 2022 variant, so you can fast charge it at lower temperatures, which is great. And on the flip side of that, they are also including for certain customers the ability to pay for the price of installing a home charger, because the Bolt, due to those slower charging speeds, is likely going to be charged at home for a lot of people, and it's really cool to see them actually partnering up with a at-home charging solution company. I'm not really sure on the fine details if they'll provide that everywhere. It probably might not work if you don't have a garage. Like, they're not going to build out a charging station out in your driveway, but if you have a garage of some kind, it looks like they'll be paying for the electrician to install a level 2 charging outlet so that you can get around 40 miles of range added per hour when you buy these vehicles, which means that for the daily commute and for driving to work and back, this is going to be a very affordable solution for a ton of people out there. And I'm all for seeing electric vehicles get more affordable and more obtainable, and now seeing pretty promising range numbers. I think 250 and up is really solid for people to spend their money on these days, and once that tax credit comes back, these new Bolts are basically going to be kind of hitting that $25,000 starting price that Tesla's probably not going to hit for a few more years. At the end of the day, I still think Tesla makes better vehicles, better acceleration, better range, better charging infrastructure, better autonomous driving vehicles. But at the end of the day, when some people are in the market for a vehicle, if they're not willing to spend much more than $30,000 to $35,000, then a Tesla is somewhat out of reach for a lot of that demographic. Whereas a Bolt, potentially qualifying for that tax credit and still having decent range, I think will make an awesome alternative. And while $30,000 may still seem like a lot for a vehicle, I highly encourage people to consider the cost of ownership and realize how much money you're going to save on gas by switching to an EV, which is why paying the larger upfront cost might make more sense in the long run than buying a cheaper gas vehicle that's going to cost you a lot more in the long run because of how expensive gas is, and oil changes, and it's a combustion engine, so there's a lot more things that can go wrong in the first place. But anyway, I'm really impressed by these types of vehicles. I'd love to check one out as soon as I can. Let me know if you guys think the next generation Bolt will be a hit down below. Thank you all for watching. Hope you have an excellent rest of your day. Take care.